All right, so back by popular demand, or just one student's request, we're going to do another I Survived novel. And I will start it off by asking you to go back in time and try and remember where you were when this event occurred. Okay? So I survived the attacks of September 11th, 2001. So you have to go back and think, where were you when this happened? Yeah, I'm just kidding. I know none of you were born because you're all babies, and I'm like an old lady. So I was in high school. I was in my sophomore English class, and somebody came running in and said, "Hey, do you see what's going on in the world?" to our teacher. And TVs came on. We had little tiny. Actually, the TVs at Marshall right now are exactly what our TVs looked like at Nederland back then. So little TVs in the corner, and those came on. We watched the news for the rest of the day pretty much in every single class. And we watched the towers fall on the news. It was surreal, weird, and awful. And I can't imagine, or begin to imagine for the people that were there or that were experiencing it. Even just the people in the streets of New York, not just the people who were in the building. It had to have just all been absolutely astounding and terrifying. And so we are going to read I Survived the Attacks of September 11th, 2001. This one is going to be worth 1 AR point. The Hurricane Katrina is worth 2, I believe, and I will put that information in these later. Okay, so whenever we start AR testing, if you listen to these, you'll be able to take the AR test over them. Okay. So these are by the same author, Lauren Tarshis. I don't know if I'm saying her name correctly. Chapter 1. And we have the image of a firefighter's helmet. Chapter 1. Tuesday, September 11th, 2001. 8:46 a.m. New York City, New York. A bright blue sky stretched over New York City. It was the morning rush. Men and women hurried to work. Taxis, cars, and buses zoomed through the streets. And then there was the plane. Many people in lower Manhattan heard it before they saw it. The screaming roar of jet engines. The massive aircraft streaked through the sky, barely skimming over rooftops. Up and down the sidewalks, people froze. 11-year-old Lucas Cowley wasn't supposed to be in Manhattan that day. His parents had no idea that he had caught a train into the city, that he was there, on a crowded sidewalk, looking up as it all began. Lucas watched, almost hypnotized, as the plane careened through the sky. He'd never seen a plane flying so low. It was so close that he could read the letters on the tail, AA, American Airlines. Panicked questions swirled through his mind. Was there something wrong with the plane? Was the pilot sick? Lost? Confused? Pull up, Lucas wanted to shout. Go higher! But the plane kept getting lower and faster. And now Lucas's heart stopped as he saw what was in the plane's path. The twin towers of the World Trade Center. The silver and glass buildings, each a quarter of a mile tall, rose high above the New York City skyline. The plane sped up. No. With one last ferocious roar. With one last ferocious roar, the jet plunged into the side of one of the towers. There was a thundering explosion. People all around Lucas screamed. And then the bright blue sky filled with black smoke and fire. And that's the end of chapter 1. So we're going to do chapter 2 since it's so short. But, your parents or your guardians or anyone that's older than you by quite a few years is going to have a memory of that day. So ask them where they were on September 11th. Most people can recall that memory without a problem. That's one of the things that's just there. It's one of the things we just know. Chapter 2. Wednesday, August 29th, 2001. Port Jackson, New York. 10 a.m. So this is a few days before the attack happened. As usual, football practice was brutal. And if you notice, a similarity between this I Survived and Hurricane Katrina's I Survived. It did the same thing, where we started off with right in the midst of the crazy storm, of the crazy flooding, of Barry being stuck in the waters and a house coming at him. In this case, we started off right in the midst of where the plane is crashing into the building, and then we go back to see what's going on in this boy's life normally. So as usual, football practice was brutal. It was 95 degrees. Lucas was soaked in sweat. 3 guys had already puked up their Gatorades. Lucas's body felt like one big bruise. A football came sailing through the air. It looked like an impossible catch, Lucas's favorite kind. He took off, legs pumping, eyes on the ball. At exactly the right split second, he leaped up as high as he could, plucked the ball from the air, and grabbed it to his chest as he crashed to the ground. All around him, guys hooted and cheered and high-fived. A familiar, happy feeling rushed over Lucas. Sure, his entire body ached. Yeah, Coach B was always screaming at them. But this is where Lucas was happiest, where he belonged, on this broiling hot turf field with his football team, the Port Jackson Jaguars. It had been Uncle Benny's idea that Lucas could be a football player. Benny was Dad's best friend from Ladder 177, the New York City firehouse where they both worked. So Lucas's father and his uncle, which is his father's best friend, both worked at a fire department in New York City. Lucas had always liked Uncle Benny. Everyone did. Dad once said that Benny was like the firehouse cheerleader, a 6'2" cheerleader with a shamrock tattoo. And here's a picture of Lucas. But it wasn't until Lucas was in 3rd grade that he really got close to Uncle Benny. That year, Lucas's dad was badly hurt in a warehouse fire in Brooklyn. He was in the hospital burn center for almost 2 months. Uncle Benny practically moved in with Mom and Lucas until Dad was better. Lucas would wake up some mornings and find Uncle Benny reading the sports pages at the kitchen table. Before Lucas could say, "Where's Mom?" Uncle Benny would grab him by the arm and sit him down. "You gotta see this," he'd say, holding up a picture of some football player Lucas had never heard of. Lucas would sit there, pretending to be interested. He'd never been a sports kid. He and Dad were always so busy working on their projects. Before Dad got hurt, they had been spending every weekend in their basement workshop, building a model of the Ladder 177 truck, the Seagrave 75, or Ladder 177. But Uncle Benny wasn't interested in truck models. What Uncle Benny loved was football. And soon enough, he had Lucas glued to Monday Night Football, cheering for Uncle Benny's teams, watching ESPN, and booing the players Uncle Benny hated. Uncle Benny bought Lucas a football and then spent hours with him in the backyard, teaching him to throw and catch. So here is a picture of the engine train model. I mean, not the engine train, sorry. The fire engine model that his Lucas and his father were working on. Sorry, dogs are going a little nuts outside. And then came the day when Uncle Benny appeared with the form to sign up for the Jaguars. "I can't really play football," Lucas said. Back then, Lucas had been pudgy, shorter even than some of the girls in his grade. But Uncle Benny got his mom and dad to sign the form, and the next thing Lucas knew, Uncle Benny was driving him to his first practice. Lucas had to smile as he thought back to that day. He was a little butterball stuffed into his pads and brand new cleats. "I think we should go home," he said to Uncle Benny, choking back tears. "No, you don't," Uncle Benny said. "You want to get out there and show what you can do." And Uncle Benny's eyes were so big and sparkling, like bright lights spelling out the words, "You can do it." So Lucas did it. And from that first day, Lucas felt like he had found his place. It wasn't really the game he loved. It was being on the team, being surrounded by the guys. They watched each other's backs. Winners or losers, they stuck together. Uncle Benny had also taught him the secret of catching a football, that you had to believe you were going to catch it. You have to feel it in your heart, Uncle Benny said. It worked every time. Almost. Toward the end of practice, someone threw another impossible pass. "Go get it, Lucas," the guy screamed, and off Lucas went, his eyes glued to the ball, his arms stretched out so long he felt like he could grab the sun But something went wrong. His heart knew he would catch it, but his ankle didn't. I was confused. It wobbled, and Lucas lost his balance. Suddenly, he was flying through the air, a missile out of control. He crashed headfirst into the hard turf. Crack. He could practically feel his brain smacking against the inside of his skull. A white light of pain exploded inside Lucas's head. He saw stars, a whole galaxy behind his eyes, and then he blacked out. So through that fall. And that is the end of chapter 2. So we're going to be on chapter 3, and I will do chapter 3 and 4 tomorrow. Have a good night.